This is Darker Days' new little spin-off Darkling series called Gossip Ghouls. Generally, the outline of this show is to look at horror media in a more general way, so we can be agnostic of our favourite roleplay game in the World of Darkness setting, and really just explore horror in all of its ways, and maybe how it intersects with various other issues, whatever they may be, how they come up naturally in the show, I have no idea. So, if you have any questions based on the show or anything else, obviously you can contact us at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com, come to our Facebook, come to our Google+, come to our Tumblr. We do have a Tumblr, I just need to update more stuff there. And it's now an appropriate point to introduce the fact that I am one of your hosts, it's Chris, who's from the main show, and I am joined by, I will introduce first, Michelle, who is a previous co-host on the Wadcast when that was going, before World of Darkness Online died. So hello, Michelle, from America.
From Marietta, Georgia, and may it rest in peace.
Yes.
World of Darkness. I screwed that up.
Doesn't matter. Well, I'll figure out something in the edit. We'll see how this goes. And of course, I'm joined by, because she's physically in the room with me, Sam.
Hello.
And yeah, so Sam's been on a few Darker Days episodes. I think we did.
I've been on 2.
We did the one which was Darker Days Darkling Chronicle Design, getting the pack together and why you need to kick people out of your group, and dealing with dark issues in your games. Oh, what was the other one we brought you on for?
It was something a little more recent, but I can't remember.
Oh, it was Paris. It had the secret frequency was Paris and Alchemy. I remember.
Oh yeah, I do.
And there was something else. Nah, well, I'll find it. It'll go in the show notes. Yeah. So we'll have different topics that'll come up each week. If people want to know your opinions on stuff, they can email us. And I think the best way to get into this is we're going to start with the classic, what made us weird? Who wants to go first on this? Because I'm not. I'm not running the show. I'm just recording the show.
I was going to say, you're not weird?
I'm certainly weird, but I'm not. I'm not in charge. No, this is it. So I'll stay quiet now.
You want to go first, Sam?
Okay. I think my first experience with horror when I was little, I remember being really afraid of Dracula, but Dracula was kind of an abstract concept to me. I hadn't actually seen a movie with Dracula or anything. I just sort of knew he was a bad guy and that he was going to come and get me. I didn't really sleep very well as a child, and I was scared of the dark and things. I think I started to get more interested in horror when I was a little bit older. And I remember being about 7 years old, and I was staying over at my father's house, having a sleepover there with my brother. And we were watching a movie. I think the movie was actually Ace Ventura. That's not a horror movie. But
I was going to say.
Well, it depends on your opinion, I guess. But I was a really big Jim Carrey fan, so we watched that, and I didn't really get most of the jokes in Ace Ventura, obviously. But back then, obviously, you had VHS tapes, and the movie was recorded from the TV on a VHS tape, and when a VHS tape would go to the end, it would rewind itself. It would stop and rewind, and then the TV would go to whatever channel it defaulted to. Anyway, my father and my brother had fallen asleep, and the movie stopped and the tape went to the end, and the channel that it defaulted to when it stopped, I think it was Channel 4, and I think they were showing a Hammer horror movie. I don't know which one, because there's so many, and it might not even be a Hammer horror. I just think it looked like one, and I remember there being a really beautiful female vampire in this, flowing nightgown, and like a crucifix burned into a hand when the hunter arrived and stuff. And that just really, it kind of stuck with me, and I really remember it so many years later, even though I've never seen that film again and I don't know what it is. That sort of started me on this path to finding dark stuff interesting, I guess. Even later on, I think I was about 12 when I saw Interview with the Vampire and From Dusk Till Dawn. Those were my first 2 big vampire movies, which I really enjoyed, although I was a little bit young for them, I guess. I read Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire when I was 14 over the space of 4 days, and I was just really obsessed with it. At the time, I'd also started watching Buffy, which I'm still obsessed with, and that was pretty much it. I was really into vampires, so my gateway into horror was vampires, pretty much.
Cool. Very cool. Hammer horror is good.
Okay, I guess it's my turn. Well,
Yeah.
I'm gonna start out with, it's Blame Britain for why I'm weird. I was actually born during the 4th episode of the Key to Time arc of Doctor Who during the U.S. premiere in America. So, literally, it was like day one, I was doomed to be weird. Growing up, my mom has a huge obsession with Halloween. And horror movies in general. So we'd watch Nosferatu. I watched a lot of the old black and white movies growing up. Abbott and Costello Meet the Wolfman. I was a huge Abbott and Costello fan because I kept getting exposed to these old movies, etc. The original Psycho, etc. But I was exposed to it at a young age, and I really wasn't ever scared of it. I found it interesting. And just kind of as I grew up, etc., during middle school, my definition of horror was dealing with the popular kids, rather than those worlds seemed just so much more fun and interesting. As I got into high school, I started getting into pen and paper role-playing games. I was a straight-out nerd. And what happened was in high school is I started playing Werewolf with some friends at the table, and I do not remember much of that game. But what I do remember is going to a used bookstore and tripping over a weird marble book at probably the lowest point in my time. And it was pretty, so I bought it for like $4 and took it home and read it, and it was Vampire the Masquerade. And that really started my kind of obsession with horror and the darker side of things, especially with Vampire the Masquerade's focus on Chicago, where I was from, and moved into kind of the dark history of of reality rather than fantasy, and how those can interact. I actually really, really would like to eventually do this one horror game I designed that my entire goal of it was to make pink absolutely terrifying. It's a Rococo punk horror game where you play as a 12-year-old girl who's been drugged. So everything's kind of that sickly pastel and things like that. But that was really the turning point for me, was finding Vampire the Masquerade. Like, I had loved horror, etc., but I never realized just how much you could create horror and have it be so cool. To be honest, I've never really been scared of anything except for those damn stupid monoliths from 2001: A Space Odyssey. I do not know why. It does not make sense. But they horrified me as a kid to the point of tears, and I'd have nightmares. They weren't even, like, legit scary. Like, they didn't fall on me or anything like that. They just sat there, and it terrified me. But it is the saddest thing. I was terrified of the monoliths, and for no goddamn reason. That's good. But yeah, if it's nerdy and like horror gets really nerdy, I have friends who do special effects for horror movies. My friend dress is I hung out with some of the people who've worked on Kitty Zombie, and being in Atlanta now, you have all the like Walking Dead stuff, etc. I never really got into The Walking Dead, but I do have a decent collection of like old school horror comics. But yeah, it's, for me, what made me weird is I'm gonna blame Doctor Who just because I was born during an episode of it.
Oh, right. At least it's classic Doctor Who, you know. It has to be classic Doctor Who.
Fourth Doctor, get out. Though I am really, really excited about the new Doctor.
Let's be honest. I mean, at least, unfortunately, he's not going to complain about, the hairdresser would...
He's not going to swear a lot.
No.
I just want him to... All he has to say is buckety once and he will be my favorite.
They'll never get away with doing that for special ones.
I know they won't, but he can be dressed in the outfit, it can be an outtake, and he can say fuckity, and he will be... he doesn't even have to be, like, in the show saying it, just in in costume say it once.
I'm sure people will edit videos.
Yeah.
It's totally...
Yeah.
That's gonna happen. But I was like, as soon as I saw the Doc Martens, like the old school, like punk kind of look, I was like, oh yes, this is going to be my Doctor. I will totally be Rule 63ing this.
What made me weird? My earliest horror memory is the egg chamber in Alien, which is horrific if you think about how old I am when that film came out, which means I can't have been more than 3 at the time. So that is, and I had nightmares for ages about aliens.
Why were you watching Alien when you were
No. I walked into the living room for some reason. I had woken up, walked in, and there was some guy's face getting suckered off. And, let's be honest, there is, because God rest his soul, Mr. Geiger, but he did design the facehuggers and the alien eggs in a very particular way, which evokes primal horror, I feel. Which there's other related things to do with just body horror. So that's where it begins. And then other things, I guess, things that made me weird. Obviously, I've always been a geek, what with an innate love of Transformers. I mean, once you get into the sci-fi element, that brings in a horror part. And then where does it really start going weird from there? Batman, I remember I must have been, 7 or 8, and it was after a karate tournament, and me and my friend watched, that evening then watched Batman on VHS. It was rented out.
Wait, which one?
The first one, as in the Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, 1989.
Okay, that one is acceptable. I was about to say if it was Batman and Robin, I was going to apologize on behalf of America.
No, it was that one. So that was, again, distinctly the most horrific part. Was obviously Jack Nicholson falling into the acid, because that's just like, And then where do we go from there? Obviously Batman stuff, comic books. I then got an introduction to anime stuff via my cousin due to, we were having to stay there. There was some death in a family, and so me and my sister were staying at my aunt's. No, not my aunt's. It's my dad's cousin's wife, so kind of the other aunts, who are nicer. And so her son is the same age as my sister, and obviously went to school together. And so I got my introduction to anime, and that was via Akira. And so I was, 10?
If we're talking about anime and other things besides horror, then this became a whole lot longer.
Yeah.
I was just talking about horror, so...
Yeah, I'm just trying to give a time, because I would say my horror introduction is maybe more from the sci-fi element, and then it slowly moved into other things, because, I got into gaming, like wargaming, like 40k and all that stuff, and I think that's where the more standard horror comes in, because it grabs so many things, and once you do that, you're into D&D, and then and then you eventually find in a magazine, a role-play magazine, you find the top 50 RPGs of all time, and you go along the list, and at number 4 is Vampire the Masquerade, and I was like, oh, Vampire's cool. Buffy's on TV. I think I need to order this.
God, Buffy.
So I ordered, this would be 1996, ordered Vampire...
97.
It would be 97. Ordered the revised edition of Masquerade, turned up in the post, my mum looked at it and went, oh, that's pretty. And that was the end of that, and that was my start of horror roleplay. It hasn't ended since.
It's funny, I was just thinking about Buffy, is that when I was into Buffy, I mean, I am into Buffy now, but when I was really heavily into it in high school, I got bullied for being into it, when I was really obsessed, especially during seasons 2 and 3. But by the time it got to season 5, it wasn't really a cult show anymore. It was, it had its origins there, but it had sort of expanded into the mainstream, because then everyone I knew was watching it around season 5. People would come to school and say, wow, did you see Buffy on Friday? And I was like, you all used to make fun of me for liking this, and now you're super into it. So that made me a little bitter. But that kind of foreshadowed sort of now when, genre shows can transcend the genre and everyone watches them. Like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't watch Game of Thrones, but that's an example, like a lot of people watch Game of Thrones, but maybe they weren't into fantasy before or something like that, or it's a much more acceptable genre, sort of horror and fantasy, which is why you have so many shows that, say even 10 years ago, they wouldn't have got the green light to be on TV because people didn't think they would be successful. So, I mean, it's a bad thing because it's so saturated, but it's a good thing because it means you get more stuff to watch. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, but there's a lot of horror out there now, which is great for people like me who love horror. So.
Well, I was also going to say, it's interesting you mentioned that specifically. We've seen a shift in the way viewing is done, too. I will totally admit, or I will make everybody else on this program feel old, I graduated high school in 2007.
Oh, shit.
I graduated, left school. It's not really the same in the UK. I left school in 2002, and I was 16 then, so yeah.
And then I left school, I left having done A-levels, so I stayed on 2 years longer than what you did, so I left in 2001. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Specifically when we're looking at viewing habits changing, for the longest time, at least over here in America, I did not study how they do ratings in the UK, but I have a feeling it's similar. The ratings are done with the Nielsen system, which is they take a certain percentage, they put a box on your TV, you get a discount on your cable, and they track what you watch. And then they extrapolate for the population from there. What they've started doing is counting online viewership, because people watch online, they record, and they didn't have a way to track that before they could track it, because they would pick up the VCR as a person viewing the show because of the way it would have to be recorded, but with DVRs, etc., they don't do that anymore. So now we're seeing more shows that otherwise would have been doomed to the original Star Trek effect. Which the original Star Trek, what happened with that is it almost didn't make it to syndication because what people would do was they'll go hang out at a friend's house and go watch Star Trek. They'll get viewed as one person rather than the 12 people that were sitting in the room. So you did not hit that syndication mark, so you wouldn't see these shows ever again because the ratings weren't that high. Now, because of online viewership, you're seeing much more viewership over time, things like Orange is the New Black, which has been a breakout hit there, and other things. Brain fart for a second. And also with the age of internet, etc. Like me, I was a huge anime nerd in high school. Oh my god, so bad. My big thing was horror animes though, but I like the really, really cerebral.
What horror anime was that? Because I'm trying to think of some really old ones. I remember.
Serial Experiments Lane starts out with a 12-year-old girl jumping off a roof committing suicide. Even you get to I like the cerebral. I like even Neon Genesis Evangelion. Oh my god, that is such a fucked up mental
yeah.
I like those. Those actually still give me chills. I can watch Saw. I can deal with that. I can deal with the normal gore porn horror movies. And Psycho, and I'm okay, that's cool. But when it's one of those things that you're sitting there and after you watch the entire thing, you can never watch it the same again just because you know what's happening. And you start picking things up. One of my favorite games for horror is Fear, and not for the normal reason. Most people are oh, it's like a Doom clone shooter, blah, 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 blah. But when you get to the end, and spoiler for people who haven't played Fear and actually care, but if you haven't played at this point, you're way out of loop anyway. When you get to the end, it goes level 1 complete, test subject pass. And it fucks your entire head because that entire time you thought the little girl was the test subject and you're the fucking test subject, so when you play it again, you can't play it the same way. You get things that you can only watch once because when you watch it once, you never get that same experience again.
Yeah.
You can't. I love those.
I think, Sam, you could say the same about another certain TV series recently on horror that way.
Which one?
I'm thinking Hannibal.
Oh, wow. Well, if you want to talk about Hannibal, I'm going to need a whole other show to talk about Hannibal.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I watch Hannibal too. That is a show on its own.
Yeah, I think we can do a show on Hannibal. What I'm going to say today is that I'm very disappointed it didn't get nominated for any Emmys again, but I wasn't surprised because that's just how the Emmys work, and they don't like Hannibal. So
It's not that they don't like it.
it's because of the genre. It's really dark. There's a million different reasons.
No, because they love
totally
American
get,
Horror Story.
Yeah, exactly.
The problem is did you look at the Emmys this year?
Yes, I did.
Who's still in there? Breaking Bad's still in there.
Big Bang Theory is always there, which is dreadful. Yeah.
Yeah, Breaking Bad is still there, and that is a problem. Because until Breaking Bad is gone, Bryan Cranston will walk out with everything for sneezing.
Exactly.
And it's funny thinking that he used to be one of the kaiju in
Power Rangers.
Yes.
And I still love watching Breaking Bad and thinking this is what Malcolm's dad's really doing for work to pay for all of his kids' shenanigans.
Yeah.
But it's still in there. So, and there's series that have ended now that are nominated, and a bunch of ones that are in there that haven't been before. So Hannibal has a much different viewership, etc., but it doesn't excel in compared to the other ones in the individual categories. As an overall show, it is a good, hard, contender for just its constant ratings. It's a good moneymaker for the network.
Is Hannibal doing more successfully internationally?
I'm not really. Yeah, it's very popular in a lot of different countries. In European countries, it's really popular. So
right, and the other thing is you have to take into account when it does popular in European countries, that means it's probably doing okay in America. Because the tastes of Americans are very, very different. Yes, you have the nerd population that will sit there and worship the ground Matt Smith walks on, but then you'll have the other population that goes, "Who's Matt Smith?" But think about it, this is still a country where Transformers did make the top 3 in the box office, and it was terrible.
On films then, if we're going to keep going with various things that made us weird, what would you say is, we'll go with you, Sam, starting, favourite horror film?
My favourite horror film? Oh my god. I'm probably going to forget all the really important ones right now. Can I name, a few?
Okay, if you keep it short and sweet on each one, we'll go with 3.
Okay,
we'll go with 3.
First of all, Interview with the Vampire, because it's a classic, it's beautiful, and it's just really well executed, and it was one of my first, so it's, I think, this is really difficult, actually. I'm trying not to pick all vampire movies.
Well, okay, you've given one. You can think for the next one.
Yeah, and then you can go around,
Michelle, your top 3 of horror films?
Number 1 is always Lost Boys.
Yes, that probably should be my second one.
Okay. Go on then.
Lost Boys it's a classic, and it kind of is my attitude about things is party all night, sleep all day, because when you're working, you're usually asleep, at least emotionally. 2 and 3, Nosferatu, of course. The special effects in Nosferatu alone, because it was before a lot of modern materials that we use for special effects, making it that much more difficult, and they did an excellent job, especially taking account in time, and kind of shaped our modern view of how certain classes of vampires should look with that. And third is not a horror movie, but it's, I don't remember the exact title, but it's the one where Abbott and Costello with Dracula, the Wolfman, and Frankenstein.
I think it's I can't speak today. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein, that's it.
Yeah, because it's one of those, they're all 3 in it, but the title only has one of them. And I know it's not a horror movie per se, but it's funny. You have everybody in their classic role as the classic horror movie monsters. They're all together at once, as themselves, and then Abbott and Costello, so it's just bonus. So though it's not a normal horror movie, it kind of brings together all the classic horror together. Though I am going to add a fourth because it kind of is there, and that's American Psycho.
Yes.
Is that your third film, or will be your third?
My third is quite controversial, so...
Okay, go for it.
It's actually the Evil Dead remake, because it's absolutely fantastic, and I don't care what anyone says. I know a lot of people really liked it, which is great, but other people didn't like it. I only saw the first Evil Dead about a month or so before I saw the remake, because I wanted to see the first one first. And, you know, I'd seen loads of clips from it before I pretty much knew what I was in for, and I expected a lot more from it, I think, and I think it was kind of, there was always a consensus that, oh my god, this is so gory, like, you're not going to believe how gory it is and how horrifying. And obviously when you watch it, it's actually, you know, it is really funny. I mean, it's like sometimes it's intentionally funny, but it's supposed to be a little bit scary as well. I was just laughing pretty much all the way through. When I saw the remake, I really loved what they did with the story and the fact that it's, you know, a little bit darker and a little bit more serious, but, you know, there are still moments where you can laugh a little bit. You know, I love that they have a female protagonist. Instead of Ash, they have Mia. And Jane Levy is so good in that role. She's absolutely fantastic. Plus the fact that, you know, they didn't actually do all CGI. They just touched up with CGI, you know, because it would have been so easy for them to do some cheap CGI for that movie of the remake, and they didn't. They kept, you know, tradition, did all the prosthetics, and it looked absolutely beautiful and gross and stuff at the same time. And, you know, I think there are a couple of issues I have with the film. It's not absolutely perfect, but I love watching it. I think, you know, since we got it on Blu-ray like last October or something, we've watched it maybe 5 times or something, because you know pretty much
Really?
if you ask me, oh, let's put a horror movie on, which one do you want to watch, I will probably say Evil Dead 2013. Yeah, I feel like watching that. I pretty much feel like watching it every month or so. That's how I feel about it. So yeah, that's my third one.
Oh, what are my 3?
I will say I have a dirty, my dirty little, I feel dirty and guilty admitting that I like watching it. The remake of Fright Night, because of David Tennant as Vampire Hunter.
That is fantastic. It's absolutely great.
It's horrible, but fantastic at the same time because of McLovin in there. It's just because if you know it's fantastic because it's hilarious due to the fact of the characters' other roles. Because I can't help but see it as McLovin is a vampire and the Doctor is a terrible vampire hunter.
Yeah, exactly. The thing is, Fright Night, the remake did so well at the box office, and everyone really liked it. And the thing is, we spent so long not watching it because, I mean, I'm not actually a huge fan of the original Fright Night. I think it's okay, but I'm not, I own it and everything, but I'm not a massive fan of it. I don't watch it a lot. It's kind of tedious, you know, it seems long when you watch it, you know, a little bit boring. But, like, you know, and we thought, you know, even though they were doing this flashy remake, I thought, am I going to like it? Even though I like Colin Farrell, I like David Tennant and stuff. And when we finally watched it, we were like, that was amazing. I can't believe we spent so long not watching that. And, you know, we could have been watching it the whole time. And it's really, really great. So, yeah, I love Fright Night.
I should do my 3 films.
Yeah.
In no particular order. This is... I have to say, because I mean, like I say, I like Alien. It's a horror film, but also, you know, I'm a horrible nerd in so many ways. And Alien is there because obviously for me, it taps into the horror of science. Because I think that's something we bring up on Darker Days a few times. It's like, I like stories where science reaches that point that sometimes there's more horrible things it can create than even the paranormal, and sometimes that's more disturbing that something could exist that could be created that way. And also the Alien is a wonderful elements of body horror, because it's a complete inversion and perversion of human biology in so many ways. There's so many metaphors in there that you can just go on for hours about it. And then also because it is so alien that it's the science fiction kind of representation of, like, you know, demonic possession and so forth, because it's something there's something horrific about, something that you cannot empathise or sympathise with or even really understand why it's doing things. It's just doing them. And yeah, it's just great. So that's Alien.
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, and space, and space can't. It also, I guess, it taps into the classic 2001: Space Odyssey. The silence of space, the droning of engines, and all that stuff. Though I'm sure Alien would be interested if you gave it really nice, operatic music in the background. That'd be really good. Another one, I'm going to have to go along with another favourite of mine, is Event Horizon. Because it's got some good actors in there.
I really didn't like that movie.
And I like a lot of the visuals in it. And I like the kind of overlap in that one, which is quite the obvious overlap between sci-fi and horror. And again, that reaching at the unknown and just doing things that humans shouldn't do. We've overreached and kind of almost punished for our sins, kind of thing. And then, final favourite horror film? Oh, this is going to be bloody hard. Oh my god, there's so many. I need to think. I mean, do I go with a vampire film? Is there a vampire film?
I think you're going to say Blade, aren't you?
Blade is... I'll say Blade. I'm not going to say it's in the top of them for obvious critical cinematography, but it looks... I think it's one of those things like genre TV. The amount of people that love that film, and you think like,
and they're not into horror movies
or comic books. Who's like, who the fuck are you?
Okay, here's the thing with Blade. Blade is not originally a comic book, or it's a sci-fi story. And it's literally like the story that it came from that my mind is blanking on, which is really bad because I'm embarrassed, because they beat that into me at wait, no, I'm thinking Blade Runner.
You're thinking Blade Runner? Oh, you're thinking, whoa, yeah, you were thinking Blade Runner. You're thinking Philip K. Dick and
I'm thinking Philip K. Dick right now.
And do androids stream of sheep or whatever it is, or do sheep dream of...
androids dream of electric sheep.
Yeah. Do sheep dream of androids?
Do they? I don't know.
Do they? That would be an interesting one. I'm going on vacation Monday. Give me a break.
So yeah, with Blade, yeah, like you were saying, it's interesting where it stands, because if you look at such a slew of superhero films everywhere, but again, that was 1996?
1998.
In 1998, particularly good in terms of, I think it had some good kind of some amateur prosthetic kind of work going on in there mixed with CGI. It was quite early with some of its CGI work. Yeah. And also, it just had a good vibe, good music. It all kind of just worked together. It had iconic scenes. And I think may have been... It kind of modernised... It's quite clear how much of that film's DNA is in quite a lot of modern vampire TV and film now. Even though at the time it was obviously ripping off a fair amount of World of Darkness with clans and houses. But it did it well. You can't argue. Yeah, fuck Underworld. But you just can't argue against Blade, because it is just such a good film. There's so many good characters in it. I mean, Deacon Frost is just awesome.
I think everyone loves him.
He's great. Yes. Yeah, I think that's a good one on my... I wouldn't say it's a top film. I would have to think harder and make a list someday. But it's good. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, it's such a shame that Blade never had any sequels.
Yeah.
I see what you did there.
Ooh. And less said about the TV series.
It was alright.
It was doing something interesting with the vampire politics, and that was good. It had some interesting ideas in there. Much like most vampire TV series, there's always something you can recover for your own tabletop gaming and then discard the rest. Or you can mourn the loss of the series, like Moonlight got.
So the hot naked guys are what we recover from True Blood, right?
If you insist.
Well, we tried to watch True Blood and we hated it. So
you know that it's actually based on that she actually plays World of Darkness.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I have a fun story about that. I was at C2E2 and I was getting my version 20 signed, or my V20 signed, by Anne Rice. And, she was right next to why am I blanking on her name? I am having one of those days where names just escape me.
Charlene. Is it?
Charlene Harris. She was sitting right next to Anne Rice.
Wow.
And I get Anne Rice to sign my V20, and Charlene goes, "Can I see that? I haven't seen that yet." Turns out she didn't own it. And I'm like, "You know Vampire the Masquerade?" She goes, "Didn't you recognize it?"
Wow, that's just... Wow.
Amazing.
I'm just sitting there like, "Oh, cool." And after...
I just thought that came to mind because I backed it on Indiegogo, and it's still in the works. And there was recently the re-release of some stuff, and I think the comic stuff is the return of Sonia Blue novel.
Mm-hmm.
So Nancy A. Collins we had on Darker Days like over a year ago. So it'd be good to have some splatterpunk vampires. I think she's writing her novel in response to the current crop of paranormal romance. That's the term I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So
just call it Twitards. We know what it is.
Yeah. Okay, we've ranted about vampires already. We got into this really good. Yeah. Any other particular things we've done? Favorite horror films? Okay, we'll keep it short now. Favorite horror related anime?
I don't even have an answer for this because I don't really think that I have watched that.
You could technically say maybe Death Note fits in.
Possibly. If that fits, then...
I mean,
Death Note was my first anime, so...
Oh, okay. Like, Death Note, my problem with Death Note is, there are so many good, mental fuck with you animes. Like, Death Note is cool. We know, as soon as he picks up the book, you know what's gonna happen. So I'm it's okay, and then they introduce L, and it's okay, so you've got two guys battling it out, and the demon's sitting there
yeah.
It's literally the entire plot of Death Note is, okay, let's all sign things and have these two demons sit there going, That's all they do. But then you got, Serial Experiments Lane is terrifying on so many levels because you can see it happening, and every episode starts, even when intro crap, etc., and it's an old anime, with a creepy voice overlay saying present day, present time, and then laughing maniacally. And it's, as soon as you start the episode, it's a reminder that this could be our life. And it's an entire anime series about, the internet torturing children, basically.
Wow. I need to, at some point, see if we can get into that.
It's so good. And, literally the first 5 minutes of the anime, the first thing that happens is you see this little girl in her school uniform running up some stairs, and then the next thing you know, she's jumped off the roof and taken all the signage with her, and she's smiling and dead. That is the first thing that happens in the anime, is a little girl commits suicide.
It's not... I was going to say, maybe Death Note isn't the one. I'm not thinking maybe Devil May Cry?
If
that counts...
Oh, no, there's the anime, too.
There's the anime, which is awesome.
I
think stylistically it's awesome. It could have been written a little better, and I wish there was more of it. Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust
is beautiful to watch.
It's great, yeah.
Have you seen the Amano Vampire Hunter drawings?
What you mean from the original manga stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's so pretty. But also for horror, Neon Genesis Evangelion. It's not strictly horror, but I'm sorry, with what happened to Asuka, etc., it's horror.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of mine. I don't know if I've got one, if there is one. Maybe I need to find more particular ones. I think anime, there's so much anime, you can get lost in it, and there's a lot of obvious stuff that grabs low-hanging fruit in anime.
Naruto.
Yeah. Okay, is there anything else? I guess we got horror novels. That's pretty...
horror novels, and I'm not allowed to say Interview with the Vampire because I keep talking about it. I'm not allowed to say anything from Vampire Chronicles for this, so I think maybe Carrie or Salem's Lot. So those are my two favourite Stephen books. But yeah, as far as other things go, I'm not really sure. I really like Anne Rice and Stephen King. But favourites, probably just those. There's so much out there to read horror-wise, and a lot of it's really disposable, I think. Not just I don't mean like these days either. I mean like, even back when I started reading horror for the first time, there was a lot of stuff out there that wasn't really worth bothering with. I mean, there's more of it now.
It's hard too, because like I've read well, not all, I'm not going to say that. Read a lot of the World of Darkness novels. Like, there's probably 2 or 3 tubs worth in my storage locker of them. And, like, I'm really weird about what I read, and it tends to be when I read horror, it's hybrid. Like, I'm not sure if I count Sabriel as horror. Maybe. I mean, it is a necromancer. But, like, I never read, like, standard horror, standard fantasy, standard sci-fi. It's always, like, hybrid or attached to a game. It's weird. I read a lot of Neil Gaiman. I'm trying to remember, like, stuff that stuck with me. My mom was always big into, like, the mystery, crime-solving stuff, and Sherlock Holmes, but Sherlock Holmes isn't horror. And that's the other thing, is, like, the good, like, crime, bloody, gory, great novels that should be considered horror, or that have horror elements of them aren't horror. And those are always the ones I'm drawn to. It's weird. Like, I always like that it's always, for me, it's mental and emotional torture is way more horrific than physical, violent, bloody crap.
Because I think that's why I have trouble knowing what to find that fits strictly in the horror genre.
Well,
because
I like reading, when I was younger, I read a lot of, like, ghost stories and a lot of Victorian ghost stories. And one of yes.
That's an entire other show.
It is another show. Actually, that was one of the first things I started reading when I got into horror. When I was younger, my cousin was really into the Goosebumps books, and one summer I was staying at my aunt's house, and I read a couple of my cousin's Goosebumps books. The first one was Night of the Living Dummy, and the second one was It Came From Beneath the Sink, which is also one of the best Goosebumps episodes. We'll talk about that at some other time. That's about a sponge which is alive and feeds on bad luck, which is very imaginative. So, anyway, I wasn't really scared of that one. I was scared of Night of the Living Dummy because I used to collect porcelain dolls. But even though I have always really loved dolls, and I had an old-fashioned doll's house and everything, I was really into it, I was also terrified of dolls. And then I wanted to get rid of my dolls because I was scared of this dummy concept and, dolls coming alive and killing you and things like that. That's always something that scared me. And But I kept reading these Goosebumps books, and my mum tried to take them away from me because I couldn't sleep, but I couldn't sleep anyway, so it didn't really make a difference because I was an insomniac and I still am. So she never encouraged me getting into horror, but I would say that Goosebumps were kind of a gateway thing when I was a child. But yeah, when I was talking about Victorian ghost stories and things, one of my favourite stories is by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu, and it's called Carmilla. And you know what I'm talking about. So,
yeah, I need to finish reading it at some point. I don't know why I've not finished it.
So everyone should read that.
I was going to stay for a second, since we were talking about the Night of the Living Dummy book.
Yeah.
There was an article in Gratz. I don't know if you read it, but it turns out there is a cam girl that uses the dummy from that
oh
book.
My gosh. That's amazing.
There was an article in Gratz about that.
That is genius.
Okay.
There's a cam girl that's doing stuff with the dummy from that.
And horror novels for me then. Quickly divert. What have I guess, again, I wouldn't say anything strictly horror-wise, but has horror elements in there. Maybe, I'm trying to think. Maybe Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, because it's so weird and twisted. And it's this far future Earth, and it's kind of like, it feels like fantasy, but it's so far future that actually it's not understanding sci-fi elements, and then there's such horror elements in there, and weirdness. And then maybe, I'm trying to think of other books with, I mean, obviously I've read some White Wolf novels. Otherwise, yeah, it has to be something that's a bit more psychological with horror. Oh no, I remember one which is a particular collection that I've got of horror things. Normally horror short stories I think do better.
Yeah, I agree on that.
This was something to do with I can't remember quite, it was to do with this guy who, let me guess right. For some reason, he was going to the church or something, had some issues to deal with, and then he could hear rats, like, in the walls or something, and then eventually he ended up being eaten by rats and stuff. And, yeah, I think, again, it's like, I'm not one for, like, long stories with obvious, someone's face gets ripped off in the writing of that. It needs to be something that's a lot more weird, and maybe a bit more esoteric, I don't know. It's very hard for me on that level. Maybe it's just because I just read and the person gets his arm cut off or broken, I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Whatever.
Well, it's like, for me, like, okay, so I'm totally using the story because it's so much fun and in my life. A couple weeks ago I went and helped my friend move, and we had to repaint the wall in her apartment. And I dragged my other friend with because he had been sitting playing Far Cry for the entire weekend, doing nothing else by that. I'm like, you need to get out. So we go to paint, and I knew he had a truck. So we go to paint her apartment, and he goes to open the window, and both handles snap off, and he puts his hand through the window. So it looked like something out of a horror scene. But I'm sitting there like, I wasn't fazed by any of that. I was just like, okay, grab it, etc. And it's realizing that, for me, like, blood and gore doesn't do it. I do not care. I am literally sitting there covered in my friend's blood, and there is blood all over the tarps on the floor. It was literally the ideal setup that if we did want to kill him, we could get away with it there. There'd be no evidence, except for the broken glass. And my friend Meredith was just like, what do? I'm like, call 911. So, I'm sitting there thinking, this should terrify me. Like, for so many horror movies, gore everywhere is terrifying. And I think it's kind of one of those things that, for some people, gore is something that they're terrified of, or sensitive to pain. But for a lot of other people, like, you understand it's just, like, bodily functions, etc. Like, it's no different from peeing. Except for it doesn't happen that often, or hopefully it doesn't happen that often.
Does it burn?
If you're squirting blood like you pee, you might have an issue. But that whole, like, mental trauma, etc., I'm guessing for me some of it's left over from being profusely bullied growing up. So I'm actually, like, when stuff like surprising mental crap happens, it actually affects me more than, oh look, blood. There's blood on the wall. Cool. Enjoy your corn syrup.
Yeah, cut your hand.
I did. So this happened a couple of years ago. It's probably the dumbest thing I've ever done, but I accidentally cut open my hand with a serrated bread knife because I was cutting into a bread roll and I didn't have a plate to put it down on while I was cutting it, so I just thought, I'll just hold it and do it. Anyway, this bread knife was new and I didn't know how sharp it was. And so I cut through the bread roll, like 1, 2, and I accidentally cut straight through onto my palm.
Oh no.
And I didn't realize for a minute, I didn't feel a thing. And then I saw blood pouring out from underneath the bread roll. And Chris was turned away from me in the kitchen. I was like, Chris, like, because I realized this was really bad. And I had cut very deeply. So, that was our first visit, and so far only, to a German hospital when we'd arrived here like a few months earlier, and we just about moved into our new place, sort of, we've been here for a few weeks, and basically we were lucky that our landlords were downstairs because they had a first aid kit and we didn't have one, but I still needed to go to the hospital because it was a really deep cut. So they kind of helped me stem the blood flow and stuff. There was, we had a long wait in the emergency room, and then they cleaned it all up and I got a few stitches and stuff. I've still got the scar now, but yeah, the blood never really fazed me. It wasn't painful at the time. It was painful when, the anesthetic wore off and the stitches were sore, but there was nothing else that really bothered me by it. Like, I think I was a bit teary because I was in shock or whatever, but it wasn't really that I was afraid of the blood. Like, gore doesn't really bother me. There are some things that make me wince sometimes, if it's really gory, like, I think we were talking about, like, if it's to do with eyes or something, it kind of makes you flinch like that, if it's somebody's eye getting gouged out or whatever, that's probably the thing that's going to make me flinch, if anything. But, for the most part, I just really, I'm not bothered by gore. I can forget about it afterwards. My thing with horror being scary has always been the stuff that kind of gets into your brain and gets under your skin after you've watched the movie or something, and you hear noises, or you think about sort of the ghosts in the movie or whatever. It's always to do with that kind of psychological horror, and things that you can't explain, like blood and gore and slasher movies and stuff you can explain. It's a guy killing people and cutting them into little pieces. That's easy to explain. When it's something like a ghost or a malevolent spirit, or demonic possession. Like, demonic possession really, really freaks me out, and I think it's something like that. When it's like a some power that you can't reason with, that you can't possibly understand, something that is so beyond your realm of understanding that it's terrifying. I think that's what's scary.
I have to say, for me, the most terrifying thing whenever you have to deal with it is kids. And what I mean by that is some of the shit that, like, I can deal with demonic possession movies and stuff like that. I can deal with the whole ghost things. I used to do ghost hunts and stuff like that. But fucking kids, man. Like, some of the crap that comes out of their mouths, and the thing is that you can't tell that they're messing or not.
Yes.
Like, the kid comes up to you and goes, "You're gonna die tomorrow." You don't know if they're joking and just playing with you, because kids just have this one look of adorableness no matter what. And the thing is that even when because you clearly know when they're lying, and half the time they're dead serious when they say stuff like that. Just a kid, like, you'll have a kid and look at you straight in the face and go, "I want to rip your eyes out in your sleep." You're just like, "What?" And you're just sitting there like, and then they'll be, "Just kidding, I love you." And you're like, "What?" Just, "No, go away, kid. You just scared the crap out of me." Or, "Who are you talking to?" "My friend." "What does your friend look like?" "He has no face."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're just sitting there like, you're saying, "I'd be fine with it if it was out of an adult." Little kid, I'm like, no.
Oh. So kids are scary, gore is fine, demons are scary, blood is fine, dolls are scary.
Kids with dolls? No.
Kids with dolls are scary.
Kids with taxidermy.
Yeah.
Taxidermy toys. Kid with a taxidermy toy. The ultimate, to say character I'd love to put as the scary thing in the game that I want to do, the punk one. Kid, rich or pre-Victorian clothing, the whole Rococo punk thing, taxidermy stuffed animal. Because if you know the kid's cool with carrying around a dead corpse, you don't know what else that kid can do.
Wow, so we've done, where did we get to? We did books, we've done films, we've done anime,
Did some TV.
we've done TV, where do we go from this? Obviously, I guess this leads into actually a good maybe last question. how do you feel that horror as it's been portrayed in media has evolved over more recent years, either for good or bad, and how you feel that maybe intersects with maybe issues that are more particular to yourselves and maybe gender, sexuality issues and all that, because these are all lots of things which are.
Question.
I know, but it sets the stage for future episodes. I'm asking important questions here.
What do you mean in particular?
Well, I'm talking about how you see. Obviously society has evolved a lot with it in terms of equality. And obviously that intersects with media in various different ways. And so how do you think then, along with those sort of issues, how do you think then horror media has evolved and maybe influenced by those other social things, or they've not taken that and are still doing some really dumb shit?
Well, I think really there's a difference between doing really dumb shit and staying true to certain horror tropes that are sometimes fun, right?
Okay.
And this is what I mean when you have the whole women in peril kind of thing in horror, which can get boring and tedious, but it's also kind of a tradition that is sometimes, played up on purpose. You have movies like Scream and stuff that kind of poke fun at that, for doing that in the genre. And I don't think that kind of trope is always bad. I don't think you can just write it off and say that, it's sexist or whatever, because there are things that are problematic in horror movies when it comes to women and stuff. But usually, for me, it's quite easy to separate what is just, a typical trope that isn't really that offensive and something that genuinely is offensive. And I feel like, in the sort of past decade or so, you've had things like Buffy that kind of turn that whole, damsel in distress thing on its head, and you've had more recently, more strong female characters. And I don't just mean, strong female character in the sense of, oh, they can kick ass and look good while doing it. That's not what I mean by strong female character. I mean just female characters that have personalities in horror, which you didn't used to get at all. And, a female character doesn't have to kick ass or be physically strong or even mentally strong to be a good character. What we've always wanted is a wide-ranging representation of women rather than just a couple of stereotypes. And I feel like we're getting more and more of that now. You've got shows like Hannibal, which actually paint women as people, which is fantastic. But yeah, I just, I think that, I think there's a place for the whole damsel in distress trope. I don't think that's all that should be done. I think it is kind of traditional and, as I said, not always offensive. But, then you've got other things which are problems that should be addressed. And I think there's a long way to go in how women are portrayed in horror, but I feel it's been a lot better recently.
Okay.
I'm actually going to look at two things, and the first one is the state of horror cons as a reflection of the fandom as itself. I'm going to say straight up horror cons are horrible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they're a bunch of bros and literal scream queens. They're literal, your stereotypical sorority types, etc. And then you have the old school hardcore horror fans, and it's torture for us. And when you look at what's in the box office right now that's doing well, everything from Texas Chainsaw Massacre's crap and Saw, they're crummy, made for the lowest common denominator movies to which these cons specifically go after. And that's what the stars they advertise, etc. Or you have The Walking Dead that's in there, but it's always the content of those shows I have never been so disgusted with a group of fans than I have with going to a horror convention, and I refuse to go to them now because of it. Like, the amount of sexual harassment, etc. Though with comic book conventions, yes, you see all this stuff written out about it. It's not nearly as bad as it is at a horror con. I will say that now. Also, great example, and also, of course, in Florida, look at what happened with Jake Rush. If you don't know about this, what happened is there was a Mind's Eye Society member who ran for office in the state of Florida. There were some internal politics, to which I won't get into, but a reporter got hold of his characters from the Mind's Eye Society wiki and painted us all as Satanists.
Oh, wow.
Excellent.
Mind you, this got all over the news. Chris Hardwick made fun of LARPers, specifically vampire LARPers, at midnight. He didn't mention Mind's Eye Society specifically, but if you Googled it, it was mentioned in articles, etc. Jake did really well by going on Colbert and explaining what LARPing is, etc. But still, the fact that could be used legitimately as, oh yeah, he's a Satanist because he's a LARPer that dresses up in a vampire costume. I may not agree with the dude's politics, he's a Tea Partier, but I don't agree with my fandom being turned into something that is not only to be ridiculed, but be scared of rather than the supportive group that it is. And that says something for the state of horror and kind of games, but mostly horror, that can be turned that way still to this day. That's just, it's a bad state of things. And I think also with the quality of stuff that's out, that it is getting better. The Walking Dead did help. However, the fans themselves need a little preening, shall we say. Just gonna put it plainly, there are people that you don't know. Just know.
Cool. Wow, I'm not even going to comment on this. Maybe I will comment how horror was. Maybe not.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Is there anything I can really say?
We're not going to tell you to check your privilege.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to eat later.
I know. I think there's been some interesting ways that horror's changed. I think there's some interesting experiments with moving away from the classic kind of tropes. I think especially when you look at non-American horror, so I'm liking things like you see like in when you get some good films that are there's some good, particularly like British horror films again that are turning up. Not the gangsters with the werewolf shit, but like I know again it kind of translates. It's not quite horror; it's a bit more sci-fi. But like Attack the Block and stuff, because again it's that way of going like not all British people drink tea and watch Doctor Who, and that's the same with European horror, because again you look at things like Wreck. Wreck is why did I say that in my list of 3 films? I was also thinking Don't Be Afraid of the Dark is a brilliant film, because we got that on Blu-ray recently. But Wreck
oh my god, you know what I forgot? And now I'm punching myself because it's literally my favorite horror film, and I just haven't watched it in a long time. The Euro version, or the Euro, Let the Right One In. Not the American version, because the American one I didn't like.
We've got it though, here. We've still got James's copy, yes. We just need to watch it.
You want to hear something hilarious? When I have my natural hair color, I look exactly like the main vampire chick. Interesting.
We'll pick you out when we watch it. I think European horror, there's a lot more, there seems to be more interesting things coming out of it, but I can't, like I say, with like things like Attack the Block or things like Wreck. I mean, Wreck was really good because it left you rather dubious about why there are these zombies. So that's always kind of good. I like that kind of when they leave you guessing what's actually there. Okay, I think, is that enough? I think we've covered a lot. So speaking tongues. So as I said, so thank you, everyone. It's been great. I think that's a good start. We can come up with topics and everything for the next one. If people want to get in contact with us, darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. Darker Days Radio is on Twitter. It has a Facebook. It has a Google Plus community. It has a Tumblr. It has a... No, that is it. We have a blog.
So you don't have a Reddit thread yet?
I know, we put stuff on Reddit and the White Wolf community every so often there, but, and we have a blog, which is mainly me putting up toy soldiers so I paint them. But I'll put this up there. Anything else to plug?
You can personally troll me on Twitter at MMOGirlKai. I also should be at Gen Con with Harebrained Schemes, but I do not have confirmation if I'm working the booth or not yet. So yeah, come to Gen Con and I will probably be wearing cat ears or in some kind of Lolita stuff because I've been into that lately.
And Sam, you're writing. You want to for Rebellish?
Not really, because I don't think it's the right demographic. But you can follow me on Twitter at Sam Capral, which is my maiden name, because somebody already took Sam Handley. Who is this other Sam Handley?
Really?
Yes, I have no idea who that is.
Hunt them down.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm currently writing fashion articles on the Rebellious magazine blog, which, yeah, I don't know if anybody's interested in that, but that's what I'm doing at the moment, so...
It's all good stuff. It's all good stuff. And you also write little drabbles when we do roleplay stuff.
I do, yeah.
And you got some Twisted Changeling stuff. That stuff on the blog.
Yep.
Nice.
I should probably edit that and you can redo it.
We can put it back up as part
I
of this.
wrote that like 3 years ago. It's probably
good.
terrible.
It's some good Changing the Lost sexy fiction going on.
Oh gosh, I really need to edit it.
So dirty.
Dude, I need to finish. I've been working on a fan kind of extension for the Thera for Werewolf, since it started out as a joke and then people liked it. So I'm actually working on wereweasels.
Oh my god. Oh, weasels. Oh god.
Weasels. Like, legit weasels. Like, I didn't think it was going to work. I originally did it just to annoy people, and then it turns out it works.
Cool. So that's it. So thank you for listening, and this is where we sign off in some wonderful, cool way, because we're cool.
Yeah.
Bye.
See y'all later.